Hey everyone, this video is meant for any student completing labs and lab reports in biology, chemistry, physics, and physical science. I just want to briefly go over the steps and procedures in order to complete a proper lab and lab report. So let's begin. If you take a look on the screen, this is what most of you will see when you enter a lesson that contains a lab report. We do not have wet labs. Wet labs are labs that you will actually do with physical materials at home. And we've also, I believe, gotten rid of most of the warm-up videos. But generally speaking, this is what you should see. You'll see the instruction videos. You'll watch that, which gives you a background on the content of the lab, and then you'll go right into working on your lab. So go ahead and open up the virtual lab. The most important step when trying to complete these labs is finding the student guide. Now when you open the virtual lab, either on the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth slide, you'll run into a slide that looks like this. It provides you with the student guide. Go ahead and open that and save it. This is a very important document. So once you open and save that file, it should look something like this. Okay. It provides you with everything you need to know about the lab and the experiment that you're running. Most importantly, at this stage, it provides you with the procedure. So as you're going through your virtual lab, this will take you step by step and tell you how to complete the lab. As you complete the lab, as you go step by step, you'll be collecting data, and the student guide also provides you with the data tables. So as you're collecting data and it's asking you to change variables, this is where you'll collect your data. Some labs have only one data table. Other labs, like this one, I think have 4 or 5. So these are really important to fill out as you go along. If you don't have a PDF viewer that lets you edit in these data tables, you have to recreate these tables in a Word document or in a Google Doc. If you're having a lot of trouble recreating these tables, you can do them by hand. Make sure that you take a very clear picture of each data table and send them to me with your lab report. Okay? So as you're going through the virtual lab, you're collecting data, and then your virtual lab will end. Once your virtual lab is over, you'll go ahead and, I believe, work on a reflection about the lab report or about the lab, just a few questions about what you did and asking you questions about the concepts that were discussed or experimented on in the lab. Last but not least, probably the most important thing is reaching the lab report. Once you reach the lab report, you're going to be provided with 2 documents. One document is called the lab report rubric. You don't really need to open this file unless you want to understand how I will be grading your lab and lab report, but you definitely want to check out this lab report guide. Let's take a look at that. The lab report guide really explains how to create and what to write in your lab report. So check it out. Every lab report has to have 4 sections, and each of these sections are listed in that lab report guide. So take a look. In part 1, we got to include the intro, includes the introduction, so that includes the title, purpose, question, hypothesis, and variables. Okay. Part 2 of your lab report is the materials and procedures. Easy. Part 3 is the data collection and organization, and part 4 is an analysis and conclusion. Depending on which class you're in, I have provided instructions on how to format your lab report. So if you run into that assignment, it'll look like this. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, this is it right here. This is generally the format I would like for you to make your lab reports. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but as long as it has these 4 sections, and it's really clearly labeled, it will be okay. But for example, I've included an example lab report you can make it look like this, but as long as it has a title, a really clear part 1 with the purpose, question, and hypothesis, a really clearly stated part 2 that includes your materials and procedures, of course a very clearly stated part 3 that has your data, and of course part 4 that has an analysis and conclusion. Just an FYI for you, for example, let's say your variables and or your hypothesis, this part 1, the introduction, you can go back to your student guide and simply copy and paste your variables, your hypothesis, your question, and those can easily go right into your lab report. It makes it really easy when you can copy and paste from the student guide into your lab report. For example, the variables here, we have fan speed as your independent variable and acceleration of the cart as your dependent variable. All you have to do is copy and paste and add to your variable section in part 1. It's as easy as that. At the end of writing your lab report, it should look something like this. Here's an example of a biology lab report. As you can see, the student included the introduction, part 1, the purpose, question, hypothesis, and variables. Again, she included part 2, the materials and procedures. She copied and pasted right out of the student guide, okay? And then her section 3 with the data and organization. As you can see, she collected some wonderful data here. All right, and last but not least, she included part 4 with an analysis and conclusion. These are 2 very separate pieces of writing for your lab report. If you're confused about the difference between an analysis and conclusion, you can go right back to your student lab report guide, not the student guide, I'm sorry, the lab report guide, which will explain to you what to write for each of these sections. For example, if you're confused about what to write for your hypothesis, you can go to the lab report guide. All right, and as you can see, in part 1, the hypothesis should be included, and it will explain to you what you should include and what kind of statements are appropriate for that section. All right, so once you're done formatting your lab report, make sure you save it as a Microsoft Word file or even a PDF. You have to add that file into this lab report assignment. Once you've added the file, you could click submit and you'll be able to move forward. If you do not submit a file in this lab report assignment, you will not be able to move forward. I have a lot of students getting stuck because they've forgotten to add their lab report file. If you have any other questions concerning these labs and lab reports, please email me. Otherwise, happy labbing up and enjoy your afternoon.